The fight for control of Congress could come down to central Illinois. Democrat Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan is running against Republican Rodney Davis. We sat down with both candidates to ask 5 important questions about the race.
The first one, how do they feel the tax cuts are impacting the economy and if they might change them in the future?
You know, I believe that you grow the economy from the middle class out. And what this tax bill did was 83% of the benefits went to corporations and the very wealthy individuals and special interests, and that doesn't help the middle class. Any tax reform that I support would have to be driven at the middle class with things like earned income and child tax credit. And you know what's really scary about that tax bill? After they blew a $2 trillion hole in the deficit, now they're coming back. Mitch McConnell has just said they want to pay for it by cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And we absolutely can't have that. You know, our seniors have paid into that their whole lives. Those are earned benefits, and they deserve them.
The tax cut bill that I voted for has had a tremendous effect on our economy. Look at the historic economic growth that we're experiencing right now in this country, and historic low unemployment. We're at 3.7% unemployment. It hasn't been that low since before I was born, and I'm 48 years old. I was born in 1970. The last time we had 3.7% unemployment was 1969. We need to continue to choose economic growth because it's giving the next generation so many opportunities that generations before didn't have to get a good paying job. And when you look at the tax cut bill and the effect it had on the average families that I serve right here in central Illinois, families are realizing upwards of $2,000 coming back into their family budgets. That's money that they can spend in spite of Springfield Democrats raising every Illinoisan's taxes by 32%. The federal government, us in Congress, Republicans in Congress, have chosen to lower your taxes and create historic economic opportunities. Now, we need to continue to protect those lower tax rates. We need to continue to protect this economic growth, and I'm leading the charge to make these individual rates permanent, just like they were before the bill left the House and went to the Senate. It came back where they weren't permanent, but I passed a bill before we left Washington in September that was bipartisan and made the individual rates, new low individual rates, permanent. And I would certainly hope that the Senate would take that bill up as quickly as possible when we go back in a week and a half.
Another big topic in this debate is health care, particularly protections for people with pre-existing conditions.
But can Congress keep those without, sorry, here we go again.
All right, 3, 2, another big topic in this debate for Congress is, not this, sorry.
We need a prompter, all right.
3, 2, another big topic in this debate is health care, particularly protections for people with pre-existing conditions.
But can Congress keep those and keep prices down? We asked the candidates.
Well, you know, that was one of the tenets of the ACA, was to make sure that people with pre-existing conditions couldn't be discriminated against. And, you know, we have almost 300,000 people here in the Illinois 13th District with pre-existing conditions. And Congressman Davis voted 11 times to repeal the ACA with no replacement, which guts any protections for people with pre-existing conditions, and celebrated in the White House lawn when they passed the AHCA out of the House that would have, you know, seriously weakened any protections for people with pre-existing conditions. And that's, you know, that's according to the AARP, the American Cancer Society, the American Diabetes Association, and Congressman Davis has been fact-checked 3 times in the last 3 days on what he's been saying in debates, because it's false. You know, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch on Monday included him in a list of candidates who have, you know, voted many times to roll back the protections for people with pre-existing conditions. The AARP called it out, and just yesterday the Washington Post did too. And his record is very clear that he has voted multiple times to eliminate or gut protections for people with pre-existing conditions.
I think the biggest misnomer about our current healthcare system is that somehow the Affordable Care Act is giving Americans affordable coverage. That's just not true. We've seen premiums in the individual marketplace go up 108%. It's families like the Stacy family from Macon County that are paying upwards of $24,000 a year in premiums and deductibles. And if they were to be diagnosed with a deadly disease like the colon cancer my wife beat 19 years ago, they would have to come up with $24,000 out of their pocket before they got $1 of coverage outside of screenings and physicals. That's not working for the Stacey family, and it's not working for millions of Americans, which is why at the time I supported the American Health Care Act that provided layers upon layers of protections for pre-existing conditions. And that's what I've continued to fight for. And remember, when we were debating a health care fix, 29 million Americans did not have health insurance, even though at the time the law required them to. And another 31 million people, like the Staceys, couldn't afford to use the coverage they have. That's not helping people fight deadly diseases or providing them affordable pre-existing condition coverage. Our American Health Care Act was projected to lower premiums, and at the same time, I ensured that we had protections for pre-existing conditions and to make sure that everybody with a pre-existing condition would have access to health insurance coverage and not be turned away. We also protected the limit on lifetime caps. We also protected the policy that I think is a good policy to allow young men and women to stay on their parents' insurance till they're 26. These are all things I advocated for that were part of our solution, because the system right now, no matter how much the Democrats want to protect it, is not working for millions of Americans, and we need to do something, and I hope it's done in a bipartisan way next time.
A lot of voters say campaign finances is something that really concerns them.
So we asked the candidates, what would they do in Congress to get rid of dark money that influences so much of American politics?
Dark money is something that my opponent says she's not for, but sits back and watches commercials being run by groups that are supporting her that even featured my kids in a negative ad. I don't care if you're Republican or a Democrat. To put somebody's kids in an ad that's bashing their dad without asking if it's okay, that's something that I think we can all agree is something no one would accept. I wouldn't accept it. But we've got to come together as a country, and we've got to come together as Republicans and Democrats to say enough's enough. Let's make sure we have more transparency in where political money comes from. Let's make sure that we have more opportunities to shine the light on the entire process, because that's what I've done in Congress by opening up how every House office spends every single penny in their budget. Those are the things that I've accomplished as a congressman, and I know we can sit down in a bipartisan way and do the same when it comes to unregulated money coming into politics.
Congress has to step up and pass campaign finance reform and, shine a light on this dark money and where it's coming from, and give people the knowledge of who's funding it. And it's unfortunate because Paul Ryan's super PAC has come in here in a big fashion, and now they're like personally attacking my husband in commercials, and it's gotten very ugly. And I'm really proud of the commercials that we have run in our campaign, and I take great care to make sure that everything is fact-checked. And we have to overturn Citizens United ultimately, but in the meantime, transparency, absolutely, we need it.
President Trump has turned the attention from Capitol Hill onto our southern border, the issue of immigration.
So we asked the candidates, how can we secure our borders while also maintaining our compassionate reputation?
Well, we have to have, border security. We have to. We can't let everybody in, and we need to make sure that we have secure borders. We need an earned path to citizenship that is fair, that is humane, and that's part of comprehensive immigration reform. And in terms of our humanitarian reputation, we cannot be a nation that takes children away from their parents at the border and puts them in cages or in tent cities. That cannot be who the United States is.
There is no more humane country than the United States of America. And anyone who is seeking asylum into this country should be encouraged to make their case through a port of entry. But we can't have thousands of people wanting to come to our border to break our laws. I'm a lawmaker. And when you ask me to make laws, I expect people to follow them. And I certainly agree with many of the constituents that I serve, most of the constituents I serve, that really want to see more border security. And I voted for full funding of a border structure along portions of the southern border where it's going to be appropriate. As a matter of fact, it's not just about illegal immigration. It's also about illegal drugs, illegal guns, and human trafficking. We have to have a border structure along portions of the southern border. But I also voted for a plan that would have not only funded a structure, but would have fixed our broken immigration system that hundreds of immigrants going through the legal process are frustrated with on a regular basis and come to my office for assistance with. We made sure that there was a long-term path to legal status for DACA kids and Dreamers, and we would have codified in law that families couldn't be separated at the border. But sadly, immigration and a fix has been hijacked by the far right and the far left. And we didn't get any Democratic votes on our compromise immigration bill, and we didn't get enough Republicans. And that's sad, because we ought to do better in this country.
Voters have told us that President Trump is something that drives them to the polls, even in 2018 when he's not on the ballot, whether that's because they support him or oppose him.
So we asked each candidate, how do they feel he's done his first half of his term?
I disagree with his focus on repealing the ACA and passing that Trump Care bill out of the House, because it would have hurt so many people in the United States and in our district. I mean, over 30,000 people in our district alone would have lost health insurance, and again would have lost that protection against being discriminated against if they have a pre-existing condition. I disagree with that, and I disagree with a tax reform plan that isn't really tax reform. That's really a giveaway to corporations and special interests and very wealthy people. I want tax reform for the middle class, and I will happily work with him on that. And I'll tell you, an area that I would love to work with him on is infrastructure. Because here in the 13th district, you know, our roads and bridges and our waterways, our pipelines, our electrical grid, and we still have a digital divide here in the Illinois 13th district that needs to be bridged. And so I will work with President Trump. I will work with anybody to get that done.
You just need to look at the results. We see historic economic growth, historic low unemployment. We've also seen, because of economic growth, that the president has been able to work with Republicans in Congress to do things that I've promised to do. Things like investing more into NIH research, National Institutes of Health, to cure deadly diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, ALS, and many, many others before they become a pre-existing condition for the families that I serve. We've been able to invest over $5 billion more in research to cure these deadly diseases just over the last 2 years. We've also worked with this administration to pass historic opioid reforms. $43 million is coming to the state of Illinois to address opioid issues. And many of the issues that I've been asked to address to fight the opioid crisis at different roundtables that I've held all throughout my district are now law, because we listened to the constituents on how to address this problem, and then I acted.